101, how to solve classical ciphers. So anyone that came here expecting a talk on cryptocurrency, this is not it. Okay, there is often confusion. So, Crypto 101. There are lots of codes here used through time. I won't be going through each of those, but I'm just kind of giving you an example of things that are known as classical ciphers. The oldest cipher classical that I know of is this little block. It's about 4 inches tall, and it's at the British Museum. It's from about 1300 BC. And it has the recipe for a glaze. And whoever wrote it was trying to encrypt their recipe. I cannot read it yet. I've been working on it. I have to be able to read Babylonian. And not only that, but they wrote it in puns, Babylonian puns. So I'm going to be learning quite a bit as I learn how to solve this particular one. So we're going through different types of ciphers. The easiest one is substitution. This is the pigpen cipher, often called the Freemason cipher. Freemasons did not invent it, but they most commonly used it. And you can even go into some Freemason cemeteries and see that they put this cipher on their tombstones. For example, the one at the bottom left is a picture I took of a tombstone. I think this one is in New York City, and it uses the pigpen grid that is underneath it. And it comes out to say, remember death. So, which is also a form of saying carpe diem, seize the day, right? Okay, we'll also be talking about, aside from substitution, transposition. Now, this is a form of transposition called a turning grill, and there are many forms of transposition. The main difference between substitution and transposition is substitution substitutes each letter of the plain text into a different letter of ciphertext. Transposition keeps all of the letters, it just moves them around. Then there is a form called steganographic. This is a way of sending a message where it's not entirely clear that there is a message. For example, 500 BC, they needed to get a message across enemy lines during a war. And they knew that any messenger they sent would be searched. So they took a messenger, they shaved his head, they tattooed a message on his skull, waited for the hair to grow back, and then sent him across enemy lines. So when he got there, he would shave his head, point at the king, and it was basically, join us. So this was obviously not a message that could be used very quickly, but it was a way of sending a message in a way that was not clear that there is or was a message. Black light is also a way to send messages, or when you were a kid, if you ever tried writing something in lemon juice or onion juice, that would be another. This is what we call an abbreviation cipher. The Freemasons used this as well. To the Freemasons, it was important that they did not write down what their secret, rituals were, but they could be very complicated. So how to help someone to remember something that you couldn't write down? Well, they would put it in this abbreviation style. I'll leave that in a minute. You can see that they would just remove certain words, and you might be able to read some of it there. Okay. And this is an encrypted newspaper advertisement. This was used a lot in the 1800s. And it was most often used by lovers that were sending messages back and forth because they didn't have telephone. And so they'd send an encrypted message and they'd send one back. And some people who were very good at codes at the time, they enjoyed reading other people's secrets. So they would get a copy of the paper and sit down for coffee and just decrypt one after the other. So they could read. This is encrypted postcards. Again, a lot of these were sent because if you sent someone a postcard and that postcard would go through the hands of the mailman and whichever servant got the mail and through whichever family was reading the postcard, and you didn't want them reading your secrets. So they would come up with these ciphers to send messages. Almost all of these were monoalphabetic simple substitution ciphers. There are a couple that we haven't been able to crack, but generally they were very simple ciphers. These were things that were more often used by military. So you would have cipher disks, and even today they will issue, say, M94s or M138s. An old one is this stick with a message around it. This is called, it's spelled skytail. It's pronounced skitale. And they would take a stick of a certain diameter. They would wrap a strip of leather. And they would write their message on it and then unwrap it and just send the strip of leather. Now, at the far end, they would need to have a stick of the same diameter in order to wrap it around. If their stick was too wide or too thin, they wouldn't be able to read the message, at least not easily. You also have to remember around this time, not very many people were literate anyway. So the codes didn't have to be particularly sophisticated. You would have the Caesar cipher, which was just shift everything by 3 letters in the alphabet. Here's another example, and I'll get into how to solve these in a minute. Right now, I'm giving you a bunch of examples. So this is encrypted text from North America around 1650. This was, we believe it was an alchemical recipe. Okay. And this is the Voynich manuscript, one of the most famous unsolved codes in the world. This is from the early 1400s, the 15th century, an entire book with text we can't read and an alphabet we don't know with pictures of plants we can't identify. It's called the world's most mysterious book. So going on to monoalphabetic substitution. Now you have different ways of doing it. You can have it where there's no alphabet change, meaning it goes from a letter of the alphabet to a different letter of the alphabet. And then alphabet change, where it goes from a letter of the alphabet to something that is not a letter of any alphabet that you might recognize. Now, from a code breaker's point of view, these are exactly the same. There is no difference between these. The trick is translating them into something that a code breaker can easily kind of get their teeth into. So here's another example of Freemason's document. So this is monoalphabetic without an alphabet change. It's all normal letters of the alphabet. And this is also Freemasons, and this is with an alphabet change. In this case, it's translating the cipher into something. This is a pig pen cipher that's there. Okay, so going on to monoalphabetic, and if anyone was here at my earlier talks, I went into this a little bit when I was talking about hill climbing. So this is Sabine Baring-Gould, who wrote a book called Curiosities of Olden Times. And in this book, he put a cipher. Now, this wasn't one that he found. This is one that he created as an example. And this was the Baring-Gould cryptogram written in 1896. So the first thing we're going to do, because we can see this is something with an alphabet change because it's not letters, and we need to put it I need to put it into something that goes into an alphabet that I recognize. So if I were working on this, the first thing I would do is I would start with the letter A, and then I would put A, B, C, D, E all the way through until I got to a symbol that repeated. So we have the section mark, and then the cross, and a 4, and a 3, and a 1, and then a 4. Aha, you've already done a 4. What was the letter that I used for the first 4? In that case, it was a C. So I'm going A, B, C, D, E, C. And any place there's going to be a 4, I'm going to put another C. And then I'm going to keep going until I have another symbol that's repeated. In this case, it's the plus sign, and that's the H. Now, any place that there's a plus sign, I'm going to put another H, and so on and so forth. So there's a section symbol. I'm going to go back. I'm going to give it an A, and so forth. So now we have these letters, which is something that my brain can munch on much more easily because it's just the letters. It's not the unusual symbols. And then trying to solve it. We're going to do things with frequency analysis and all that. This is a very short cipher, but just as an example, the next thing I would do is frequency analysis, and I would count different letters and see which ones were the most common. So who here knows the most common letter in the English alphabet? E. Very good. Okay. Second most common? E. Right. And this is because we have the words the and there, and they're possessive, and there it is. And so E is just used all over the place. And so here we see the highest bar on there is an E, which means about 12 to 13% of letters in a typical English text are going to be the letter E. So if we're translating something and the squiggle S is the most common thing there, it is likely, not necessarily absolutely, but likely to be an E. It's a place to start. Here's another one, a substitution. And again, we have these odd symbols. And I'm not going to put it into the letters here. I'm just going to go straight to making our guess. Is this a monoalphabetic substitution with an alphabet change? And so we did the frequency analysis on it, and we can see that squiggle that looks like an 8, there was 27 of them, and we're making a guess that that one was the letter E. And the next most common we could have guessed was a T. In this case, it wasn't. It was an IJ, and the third most common was a T. So you could see it 17, 16, so it's close. So there's a lot of guesswork, and you need your eraser, and you're going back and forth a lot. And this one came out to be, the title came out to be Dissolution of Sulfur in Something. And if you look at the actual parchment, dissolution of, and then you have the triangle with a plus under it, that's the chemical symbol they used for sulfur in, and then they had a different symbol, and that was kind of the secret of this particular recipe of what it was being dissolved in. And then it was take excellently well purified bay salt, dissolve or melt it down in some convenient vessel over the fire, then throw some sulfur of any metal leisurely upon it, and so by degrees it will melt in it and become fusible. So that was this particular parchment, that's what it was saying. So another way to do frequency analysis is there's plenty of tools that'll do it. This is one that's coming out of Europe. Most of every cryptographer that I know in Europe is using it. It's not quite as popular in the United States, but it is still very useful. Called Cryptool. You have to take some time to install it, but it has many, many tools that can be used to crack codes. It is open source, so it's many people have worked on it, and over 50 people have worked on it, and they're continuing to work on it. So when a new code is cracked, like the Zodiac cipher, and they'll say, okay, what do we need to add to Cryptool that would have helped to solve the Zodiac cipher? Other tools that are available online, Multideck, Rumpkin, the one in the middle there by Tyler Akins. He's a friend of mine I met through one of the conventions, and he's always adding new tools to that. So I use that a lot. And CryptoCrack can't tell you who did it because they have chosen to remain anonymous. And they can do frequency analysis and kind of anything that you want. This is Rumpkin's website. This is just one of the pages in his website. So he's got like the fourth one down there. It says Dancing Men. That is to solve the code that's in one of the Sherlock Holmes stories. And Goldbug is from one of the Edgar Allan Poe stories. So he loves adding different tools as he goes along. This is another page from Rumpkin's site. And so if we come back to what we were talking about and you run it through these sites, and again with guesswork and back and forth because it is very short, and then you'll eventually get the answer, which is a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Simple, plain text phrase. And many other monoalphabetic ciphers have been solved in this way. So now we're going to go to transposition. And again, just one example here, turning grill. There's many different types of transposition, but here is an example. So along the top, you see the message to be or not to be, XXX. And we're going to take each letter and we're going to put them into the holes of this grill. And once we fill it, then we're going to turn the grill and we're going to continue. And then the X's there are to pad it out. So we have the full set of letters there, right? And then once we have that done, then we take each row. So the ETTO along the top becomes the first four characters of cipher message, which is we've written at the bottom. So then OBRN and XXTX and OUBO. So that would be the ciphertext that we would send to our recipient, and then hopefully they have a grill of the same type with the holes in the same places, and then they're able to unwind it in the same way. And this type of cipher system has been used for hundreds of years. We found examples in the libraries in Holland and in Old England and in Italian. There are many forms of people using turning grill. One of the unusual things about turning grill is normally when you have a cipher, you want lots of ciphertext to work with. And the more ciphertext you have, the easier it becomes to crack. With turning grill, it's the opposite. The bigger it is, the more difficult it is to crack. So computers can be very helpful in solving turning grill. Hill climbing is a method. So when trying to solve turning grill, one of the ways, because it's not a substitution, so knowing that E is the most common letter isn't helpful at all. So you need to find some other way of figuring out when are you on the good track of cracking the message. And what you're finding with turning grill, you're looking for letter pairs are going to be your friend. So a TH, EN, ER. If you run into those, you're probably on the right track. But if you run into something that's like XQ or QR, that's very rarely would you ever see that in English. So if we're scoring it, when you have those TH, EN, ER, those are what's called a high score letter pairs, and something like QR, CX, PF, those would be considered low score. So now I'm going to show you a video, which I hope works. And this is because I was looking at my slides and trying to think, how can I tell them about another way to solve the transposition? And I'm looking around and I'm looking at Let Me Know's video, and it's the best I've ever seen for this. So I wrote to him and I said, can I use your video in my talk? And he said, yes, thank you for asking first. So I'm seeing reaction back here. Is Let Me Know, do you know Let Me Know?
I do. I know exactly that. That's from the crypto one.
Yeah, it is. So you helped him with this?
No. I didn't know the video.
Okay, yeah. And it's exactly from his video when I was looking at that. So let me see if I can get it.
R-O.
Wait, bigger.
You're not on the screens.
Okay, are you seeing it yet?
No.
No. All right.
Disconnected.
I can fix this. All right. What about now?
No.
No. I heard both no and yes.
Yeah, we hear your desktop.
Yep, it's
desktop.
an empty desktop. It's your other screen.
Hmm?
It's showing the desktop, not like your.
Aha. Okay. Well, what about?
Yeah.
Hey. Okay. All right. Still good?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. And I hope it sounds well. Okay.
Alright, once K2 had been unlocked, they immediately set their sights on K3. As previously mentioned, frequency analysis indicated K3 had been encoded using a transposition cipher, so a substitution cipher like the one used in code K2 was definitely off the table. While there are many different kinds of transposition ciphers, they often rely upon some sort of matrix. For instance, imagine we wanted to conceal the plain text, "This is a secret message." We would then pick a keyword like cloaked and write down the message in a grid or matrix like so. Then we assign a number to each letter in the keyword based on their alphabetical order. So A, C, D, E, K, L, O. Then we rearrange the columns in numerical order. Finally, we write down the letters in each column to generate the ciphertext. Fairly simple stuff. But that simplicity is also the weakness of a cipher like this one, because you can sort of guess your way to a solution with a lot of patience, a bit of luck, and some know-how. And that's precisely what the NSA team did. They quickly noticed there's only one Q in the entire K3 ciphertext. They also knew that plenty of English words that begin with Q are followed by a U, and there were only 5 U's. So they simply took the Q along with a few letters before and after and wrote them down as a column. Then they did the same with the 5 U's and placed them next to the first column. Some of the letter combinations were problematic, like YY and HH, which would be unlikely to show up in an English word. But other columns looked more promising, like the HE in this pair of columns, which could be the end of the most common word of all. So they tried a few T columns, followed by some more columns, and a few more columns, and that was pretty much it. They eventually recovered the entire plaintext through nothing more than educated guesswork. In fact, the assumption that Q would be followed by a U proved to be wrong, but they still managed to find a solution. They also realized that the last 4 characters were actually part of K4 rather than K3. Alright, so that was K3 unlocked. On to K1.
Great video. I highly recommend watching all of it. And you can get a link to it on my website. Back here. All right, let's see. Back to let's try that. And you can tell me if it's working or not. Yeah. All right. Good. Okay. So this is another type of system. It's substitution, but it's a different kind of substitution called a nomenclator. So this is something that's been used for hundreds of years, and it combines monoalphabetic substitution with basically a code book type of substitution. Okay. So a nomenclator, by the way, is named after a title of someone. So if you've seen Bridgerton or any of the medieval movies, which I'm sure many people here have, and someone enters the room and it's Lord and Lady Chanteron entered, that person is calling out the name. So the nomen is declaring the names, the nomenclator. And that's what this code is named after. And it's been used since the 1300s. Here is an example of a nomenclator. So we see we have on the left, are you seeing my mouse, by the way, or no? No, okay. So on the left, we have the letters going to numbers, and then we have a few words that go to numbers. So if we're trying to encrypt this phrase, will come from London to Berlin. So the word will do 1 letter at a time, 23, 9, 12, and 12. And then the word come, letter by letter, and the word from, we have in our code list there. So for that word, we're only using the number 43. And then London, again, we only have a single number. And 2 we need to spell out, and Berlin is a single number. Right? So here's an example of a real nomenclator table from the 16th century. And here's another one from the 17th century. So when they were doing them, it was not only creating one of these tables, but creating one for each of the possible recipients. So whoever was getting the message would need to have something similar in order to be able to decrypt what they have received. And here's another trick some of them use. So you see the letter D there could have been any one of 3 different numbers. So that makes it just a little bit harder, and that's called a homophonic system. And also they used letter pairs, so N, A, and E, and I, and O, and U, and each one of those could have been one of 4 different numbers. So again, very tricky to decrypt it, though that is something that people are doing today, and I know some people that love doing this, is if they have an encrypted message and they know it was done with the nomenclator table, and we don't have the nomenclator table, they try to reconstruct the nomenclator table by putting a bunch of encrypted messages together and trying to get the table. And that gets really exciting in our community because once they've created that table, we go to a bunch of other messages that we haven't been able to solve yet. And we go, were any of these encrypted with that table? So it's kind of like a kind of an anti-arms race that's going on. Can we make a table? Can we decrypt something? Can we find a table? And we don't yet even have all of the messages that are written with nomenclator tables. Anytime I go into the stacks, into the library, I find messages that were encrypted that haven't been decrypted yet. And I kind of like set it aside, and maybe I'll, depending, because maybe I'm working on some other project. I don't want to take time decrypting this, or maybe I can encrypt it or decrypt it, and maybe, oh, here's the table. It's, 3 pages further on. Or I'll call George. George, I found one that hasn't been cracked. He's like, great, thanks for telling me, because he gets so excited when I find one. Okay, so nomenclator table, and here you can see actual words that start with the letter H. Each one of these is a 3-number system. So the way that this might have been used, this is a ciphertext from the 18th century, and you can see that it has, at the beginning, it's all just normal written clear text, and then when it gets to the juicy bits, it's all into numbers from the nomenclator, and then it comes out back to clear text, and then you have, I am, sir, with great regard, your most obedient. It's like Hamilton, right? It's your obedient servant. So let's see. So here's another ciphertext that's written again with clear text at the beginning, and then you have the numbers that start there. You have the numbers that start, and above each of the numbers, someone has written the letters that equate to that particular number. And as I said, there's thousands. So how to solve a nomenclator message? One simple method: find the table, or find the one who's recreated a table. And here's an example of a French nomenclator message. Anyone here speak French? Good. So you can check me if I'm wrong. Call me. So again, we have clear text at the beginning, and then it goes into numbers, which is where the red is highlighted, and then more clear text, so forth. And here is the nomenclator table, and I'm just going to point out one particular part of it here, which is the number 1383, which is lacage, and then the actual letter would come out like this. Monsieur le Duc de Damati, qui lui avait demandé quelques jours de repos après le cap. So he's asked for some rest, and His Majesty has proposed to do something to reestablish communication between the two. And she's nodding, I'm getting it right. Yeah, okay, good. And then down there where it says lacage, that is the 1383 that I pointed out on the previous slide. All right, so breaking a nomenclator message. If you have the table, if you don't have the table, it can be very difficult to break a nomenclator message, but the tables are not always well written. So here's an example of a nomenclator message. This is from 1573. This is from the Vatican to a papal diplomat in Poland. And just by kind of eyeballing the message, I mean, for me, I'm seeing a whole lot of 9s, because you have that 9 and you have that swoop underneath the descender. And if I looked at it some more, and I'm seeing, okay, a lot of 7s, a lot of 9s. And what it is that most of this message is 2-digit numbers that are being repeated, but a small set of 2-digit numbers. And there is at least one 3-digit number up at the top there, which is 608. So when you have a whole bunch of 2-digit numbers, as a cryptographer, I'm thinking, well, maybe these are the letters of the alphabet. Maybe they didn't use a homophonic system. Maybe it's just straight substitution. And so could we just do frequency analysis on it? And sure enough, that was the case. We looked at all these numbers, and we found that the, the 78 was, I don't remember which way it went, but we found that one particular set of numbers was the most common set of numbers. And so that was going to be the most common letter. In this case, it wasn't in English, though. It was in Italian. All right. So anyone here speak Italian? Go for it. Your Italian's going to be better than mine. Speak loudly.
And no thing can.
You got a microphone for her?
Oh, I don't know if I want to do that.
No, I love it. I love it. You're the best. And no one else here speaks it, so we won't know if you're doing it wrong. Okay?
But in no thing may it be restituted a little. Sanità would be health, I think.
Just pronounce
Okay.
it. Just pronounce it in Italian.
Giudicando che con nessuna cosa si possa restituire più sanità a questo regno che con mandar costoro alla guerra, recuperazione di beni regi, il mosco per smaltire. In questo modo i mali umori turbano la religione cattolica e innanzi la sua partita ha dato molto.
Bravo! I'm going to be repeating the video of this so that I can get your pronunciation right. Okay, thank you. So I will probably put it out about 608. We don't know what it means because we just had this one letter to work with. It's probably a person or a location. Yeah. Okay. All right.
But who's acting against the Catholic religion, but based on the law.
Yeah. Okay, so breaking nomenclators, again, is an active field of research. We're running into these in the libraries all the time. So so that's substitution, transposition. I gave you some samples of others. If anyone here wants to cut your teeth on cracking one of these messages, there's a few sites you can go to, and one of them is Mystery Twister. This is a crypto challenge contest where people will sometimes upload things that they've already written themselves, or they will upload existing ciphers. And they'll also rate them by levels 1, 2, 3, and X, X being some of the most famous unsolved codes in the world that are there. So again, it's something you want to play with. Another thing I highly recommend is the American Cryptogram Association. Is anyone here a member? I recommend it big time. It's $20 to $25 a year. They will send out this newsletter called the Cryptogram. Get it? If they send out like once every 2 months or so, and they've got about 100 different puzzles in it each time. And if you solve them or any of them and send in your answers, they do it on a point system though. So the harder the puzzle you solve, the more the points you get. And then once a year they have sort of it's not an actual prize, but it's for bragging rights. You can say you got this many points, and they've got the beginner level and the journeyman level and the master level. And usually on the front of it, as you can see on the left, is going to be something that when you first look at it, or when I first look at it, I'm like, what the hell? But they've also got a saying like, if you stop trying to find the solution, you will never find the solution. So it's maybe something that you can kind of put up on, tape to your wall or something and just keep glancing at it, or put it on your desk and actually work at it. And it's a neat thing, solving one of these. And when you first looked at it, you were thinking, I could never solve that. But then if you just keep kind of picking at it, and being able to solve it is an amazing dopamine kind of feeling to it. So you don't have to solve everything in every issue, but you can look through for something that's easy. The second page here where it says aristocrats, that's known as the easier kind of puzzles, where it's going to be monoalphabetic substitution and where you see the different word breaks that are there. So if you want to pick something that is more likely for you to be able to solve, start with the aristocrats. Another place that you can go, if you're interested in this, is go on Facebook. And there are some Facebook groups. I recommend one in particular called Cryptograms and Classical Ciphers. Now, do be cautious, because if you type cryptography anywhere on Facebook, you might land on cryptocurrency. There's always a confusion these days of even people that should know better they're looking for cryptocurrency and they type in cryptography, which really doesn't have a lot to do with cryptocurrency, but just be careful where you are. So if it says classical cryptography, you'll know that you're in the right place. And also, if you run into something that you're trying to solve and you haven't solved it yet, you can often post it in this group and ask for help. And you'll probably get answers within about 24 hours because there's a lot of people that are watching this group. Also, if you find something in an attic or you see something in a used bookshop or some sort of a sale somewhere that looks old and it looks encrypted, let me know. I'm always interested in seeing those. Klaus is also my co-author with this book. He's also very interested in seeing those because, like I said, if there's something that hasn't been solved yet, if we can find other things that were encrypted with the same system, it may help us. There's one in particular called the Luton postcard, where there's just this one postcard that we haven't been able to read. We actually put it's sort of in the background here behind the robot, because we're hoping that someone is going to see it and go, oh yeah, I saw a postcard that says that. Take a picture and send it to us because we really want to see more examples of that. Okay, another place to go is on Reddit. Again, be careful where you're going. So our codes is classical ciphers, but I think our code is not. So just as you're searching, just kind of keep an eye out as to what exactly they're talking about. So summary. We have different types of encryption systems. We have substitution, transposition, steganographic, and the mnemonic that I showed you. And when you're trying to solve one of these, the first thing is see if you can identify the method, but even if you can't, try to identify the context. Was this a postcard? Was it a newspaper ad? Was it somebody's diary? And that's going to give you more of an idea of what you're looking for. And then one of the first tools to use is frequency analysis. Either count it yourself or use one of those tools. And guesswork is going to be a big part of it. Everyone who's cracking a code is going to be guessing. No one can go just like A to B to C to D. They're always going to be guessing. And then lather, rinse, repeat. Lather, rinse, repeat. It's a long time. Okay, any questions? Yes, come on up to the microphone, please, or hand him the microphone, please. Either way.
Thank you. I enjoyed your talk. One of the questions that we've been having, just philosophically at work, is what is the difference in your mind between obfuscation and encryption? Should there be a line? When do we where do we draw that line? Thank you.
Yeah, obfuscation and encryption. So, security by obscurity kind of thing. Steganography is hiding something, obfuscating something. For me, encryption is generally there's letters involved, there's symbols involved. But even if there's not letters, you call it cryptography. But for me, generally, it's got to have some sort of an alphabet or groups of words.
Any questions?
Yes, back there. You look great.
Thank you, as do you. Have you ever found any ciphers which could not be brute force? That is, is it possible that all ciphers and encryption methods could be brute forced eventually? Or have you found some that with infinite iterations might not be solvable?
Yeah, the short answer is there are some that are not solvable. Now, the next question is were they intended to be solvable at any time? Because there are people that, just hoaxers, trolls, that will create something with random letters and they'll send it to me and say, hey, Elonka, can you solve this? And I get these all the time. And I don't even spend time on it because I've got so many other things that are taking my time. Now, if they send me something that I can tell is old, it came out of an attic or a chest somewhere, or is a picture of something that is old, I'm more likely to take a look at it because I could tell that one was intended to be solved. And that kind of ties into your question as well with obfuscation and encryption. Is it something that was intended that there was a method that a sender was going to use a method to encrypt a message, send that message to a receiver that was going to use that method and then decrypt it to get a message, and that this was going to be done more than once, going back and forth. That's a cipher system. And they also have this thing about named Alice and Bob, and there's names of people that are sending these things. Where if it's just something that's hidden, maybe it could be a code. For example, Mary Queen of Scots was just in the news a couple of years ago. Now, there it was definitely encryption, but the tricky part also was where she was imprisoned, how to get the messages out. And they were sent out in beer barrels, those big barrels. Some people say they were sent out in the corks, some say in the barrels, where the empty barrels were going out. So that would be obfuscation in terms of hiding where things were. But once you had the messages, then that would be encryption. And a sorry part of that was that her messages, the system, she has a spy master, and recipient has a spy master, and the people in between have spy masters. And the spy masters might decrypt things, or they might bribe people and get the answers that way. And so anytime she was sending something out, it was going straight to the enemy to decrypt it. And then it was going on to what its final destination was. So she didn't know this at the time, but every single message she sent, the enemy was reading. And as soon as she said something specific, like, tell me the names of the people that will be involved in this plot, boom, that was what they needed to literally sign her death warrant.
You have a question, Greg?
Okay.
Following on that last question, what's the likelihood that the Voynich manuscript, what's the likelihood that the Voynich manuscript is not actually solvable and is basically a glorified art book?
Glorified art book. It's a great question. For those who don't know, Voynich manuscript, one of the most famous unsolved codes in the world, written in the early 1400s. My answer on that varies from day to day. Was it a code? Was it an art book? Was it the scribblings of someone who was schizophrenic? We do know that whoever created that book had means, because you've got hundreds of pages of this parchment, and I think it was goat skin, but it was many animals gave their lives for the parchment that was there. The ink was there, and it was not cheap either. So who would have spent that much money to create something like that? It could have been done as a hoax. If they were creating an art book, we don't know of anyone else that was creating art books of that type. Klaus, my co-author, I helped a little bit, but it's really his, is the EBL, the encrypted book list. And any book that we found that is encrypted, we've put it into different categories. Was it an art book, or was it a hoax, or was it meant to communicate scientific things? And around the time of the Voynich manuscript, which is one of the oldest things on that list, there's nothing else like it. So again, it depends what day you ask me. Most likely a hoax, or possibly someone, a younger member of a family that was schizophrenic and was doodling, and someone else in the family took all the doodles and gave them to a proper scribe and said, make it look nice. And the scribe may have looked at it and went, I don't know. So they just kind of made up an alphabet, as they went, and trying to draw pictures of these plants. And then the third thing I have is that it may have been a code by a family that was selling medicinal ointments. So I'm thinking this is early 1400s. We've radiocarbon dated the pages. So this is about 100 years after the Great Plague. And so people are a little more health conscious. And when people were selling ointments, the price of the ointment would be directly related to the rarity of the herbs that were in the ointment. So if you had a book showing all these plants that can't be identified, like, herb, far away, very difficult to get. So that may have been one of their sales catalogs. Maybe, maybe not. There you go. There's my answer.
I'm just curious, a lot of the much older encryptions seem to have something to do with science and scientific method. And I'm curious as to whether or not we know why that stuff needed to be encrypted at the time.
Okay, if I heard your question correctly, it's that older codes seem to have something to do with science and the scientific method. So why were they encrypting that? Right? So the cuneiform, with encrypting the glaze, that was their secret. That was their family's livelihood. So if they're publishing it, so to speak, in writing, they want to make sure that only people that are supposed to be reading it be allowed to read it. Other times in more modern codes, like around the time of the telegraph, scientific codes are encrypted for two reasons. One is when you're sending a telegram, you're charged by the word, so you want to come up with very short messages. And another reason is that if you're having someone send a message with a lot of numbers in it, 32 degrees, declination, right ascension, this, that it's more likely to have a typo if it's just numbers. But if you find a way to convert those numbers to a word, like the word green means 33 degrees right ascension, it's more likely to be communicated properly. Are you thinking of another code in particular? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hi, great presentation. Do you think Bitcoin will hit 150K? Can you speak a little bit about the impact of AI on the field, both in creation and solving?
Sure. And I'm getting these questions all the time, and AI is becoming more and more popular and more pervasive in our lives, mostly for good reasons. Not always, but mostly for good reasons. I have been experimenting with all of them: ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, Gemini. I spend most of my time with ChatGPT because I'm a creative person. I made games, and you know, every so often I'll say verify. When I say verify, it has to give me a haiku about whatever we were just talking about. And it has to be a good haiku, and then we usually launch into a discussion about whether or not it's a good haiku or not. But it's good at that. You can say write a 3-stanza poem in the style of Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven about peanut butter, and bam, you know, it could just come out with it. So I'm just really intrigued by the way it does things. Now, the LLM, the large language model, how does that tie in with codes? Not well. With GPT-4, which was, they just came out with GPT-5 within the last few weeks. GPT-4, I would send it into circles trying to tell me about crypto. So I'd say, tell me the answer to K4. We kind of go, well, it's not solved yet. And I'd say, okay, tell me the first 3. And it would just have so much trouble. It would tell me that the third part was 97 characters long. And I'm like, no, the fourth part is 97 characters long. And it would say, no, the third part is 97 characters long. And I'd say, do you know who you're talking to right now? Now with the GPT-5, it can count now, which is good. But it can't solve. So if I ask it to give me, say, the answer to K4, and I know that K4 is 97 letters long, it's got certain words. I know it has the word Berlin and clock and northeast and east in very specific positions. And I say, give me the answer, 97 letters, it has these words in different positions. And if it thinks about it for a while, and it's fun when it's thinking, you click on the word thinking and you can see its thinking process. It'll give me a sentence that has those things, but it can't give me any kind of a method for how it got from cryptography to that method. It's just giving me an answer. And there's people every week, sometimes multiple times per week, who are contacting me and contacting the artist of Cryptos saying, I've solved Cryptos. And because the AI said I did. And they're presented, there's nothing. And I've actually had a joke with mine. I call my ChatGPT Sparrow. Anyway, so one of these people wrote to me and said, I've solved Cryptos, and here's the answer. And here I have a certificate that I solved it, written by my AI, saying you are hereby certified by your co-solver. And I went to my Sparrow and I said, I want a certificate of something. And we were just making certificates, all kinds of weird things. So the AIs are programmed to be obsequious, pleasing, sycophantic, if that's how it's pronounced. And so if you're trying to get something solved, they'll do their best shot and then they'll just make things up. They'll hallucinate. So that they can't yet. Maybe at some point. Now their real skills are with language and not with mathematics. Okay. So, yeah.
Hey, great presentation. I also was gonna piggyback off that because that was my first question. The second question, I was curious if you knew of anything based on like the field, if quantum computing or anything like that is actually something that is legitimate at the moment, or is this all theoretical? And it's like, is there any, based on what you see, do you see anything going towards that direction, or is it just like what you were describing, where you're just like talking to essentially a her, or like one of those like robots that essentially are there to just to be as a servant, not necessarily mathematical computations?
Really interesting question. Klaus, my co-author, is very much into quantum. He's giving talks on it all the time. And what he's saying is that really nobody really understands it really well. And in terms of what quantum can solve, it could maybe solve something that was very, very short, but not anything that had a longer length to it. We're still so early on in developing the whole concept of quantum computing. Now, 50 years down the line, it might be a very different answer. But right now, I don't think that quantum is useful for cracking codes at all.
Thank you.
More questions?
Hello, thank you so much for the talk. My question is, if I wanted to pursue cryptography as a would I do better when it comes to my academic studies to study linguistics, mathematics, or something else?
Okay. Cryptography as a career, what to study. Right now, mathematics is the way to go. The biggest employers right now, employer singular, is the NSA, the National Security Agency. And they've got offices all over the United States. They've got their main office at Fort Meade near Washington, D.C. And sometimes you can be hired directly by the NSA, or if you're a professor somewhere, they may do something where they do some cross communication. They bring you in for a few months and you share information and then you go back. So the number one thing is mathematics. Now, if mathematics isn't your thing, then study what is your thing. Linguistics, different languages, culture, all of it's useful in the long run. And with Cryptos K4, it's been 35 years now and no one solved it. And why? I think the artist did something goofy with it. So we've had the college-educated PhD cryptographers working at it, and they haven't had any luck. So I believe that if it's going to be solved now, it's going to be someone who has experience in something else, gardening, someone who really has a perspective that we haven't considered. because he wasn't trained as a cryptographer at all. He was an artist. He liked literally moving rocks around, and maybe doing some architectural things. Now, another bit of trivia, well, not so much trivia, it's in the news. Cryptos K4, the artist, has decided after 35 years, he wants to sell the answer. So there's going to be an auction at one of the big auction houses starting in October that will end on his 80th birthday, November 20th of this year. So that's bringing a whole bunch of buzz in the crypto community of who's going to buy it. What are they going to do with it? Are they going to announce it? Are they going to keep it secret? How much will it go for? And the auction house is guesstimating it's going to be around $300,000 to $500,000, which is what an Enigma, a World War II Enigma, is currently going for. So if somebody spent that much money on it just to announce it, they're going to lose the value of their investment. Better would be to hold on to it, keep it secret, and then see if it goes up in value. I have, since I'm sort of the leader of one of the main groups of enthusiasts, what I would like to do is get in touch with whoever buys it and say, may I look at it? I'll keep it secret. I was a game developer for 24 years. I'm good at keeping secret. To see if it's solvable. I don't care about the answer. I care about the method. Is this something that is solvable? And if so, then it would be nice to announce that Elonka says, yes, it's solvable. And then I'm going to back off. I'm not going to run the groups or do anything else. Whether or not I'd still give talks on cryptos, that's something we need to work out. But I just want to see that it's solvable.
Hello. With cryptography, there's a couple of different use cases I would imagine beyond just like hiding secrets. With cryptocurrency is a good example, but are there any that you're aware of that are in development or research that goes beyond what we typically consider as cryptography, that is a newer thing that we might want to keep an eye out on?
It is a what thing?
A newer product, a newer another use case of cryptography that would be interesting for us to keep an eye out.
Well, I mean, with the NSA and what the NSA is doing, and the modern ciphers, like when you take your bank card and you put it into an ATM machine, those are using ciphers, cryptographic systems that are so far beyond anything that I mentioned here. Like you're taking a prime number that is 100 digits long, and you're multiplying it by another prime number that's 100 digits long, and or what's called an asymmetric encryption system. So with a monoalphabetic substitution, it's symmetric. An A will go to a G and a G will go to an A. With modern systems, they have asymmetric systems where you can't, I have a key, you have a key, and we need a different key in order to decrypt it. And these things require some serious university education in order to understand Diffie-Hellman algorithm and RSA and all those things. So yes, there continues to be research going into all of those things. And if you're interested, there is a man named Bruce Schneier, Schneier, and he's doing a cryptogram newsletter every so often, but it's focusing on the modern encryption systems rather than what I do with the classical systems.
Any other question?
Yes, Brett here.
For like these classical systems, what might a classical cipher look like in a non-Latinate sort of language setting? Like non-Latinate characters, like for languages that have thousands and thousands of characters, is that different, or do you know anything about that kind of stuff?
Like if a code's written in Chinese.
Mhm.
I have never been able to fully understand a code in Chinese. What I've seen have been where they would translate it into some sort of a Western language and then encrypt that. But it's not something that I've really studied in depth. I know that my book was translated into Japanese, and I said, send it to me because I want to know. And then I got it, but I can't read it. So I have a Japanese cousin who was able to read it, and then they talked about what the person was writing in the notes and the margins about it. To my understanding, the codes are generally translated into something with a Western alphabet, but I don't quote me on that. Anyone here know more about it? Okay, then I was right. Yeah.
George, I had a question. All right. Yeah.
Get more up here.
Thank you for being here. Do you have any tips for coming up with a code to make it less easy to break?
Tips to create a code that's more difficult to break. Yeah. Well, my first advice is practice breaking codes first. Because it's a really common mistake with cryptographers or with people, puzzle designers. I would see this all the time, where puzzle designers create a puzzle and they think it's easy or they think it's hard, and they never have anyone else test it. So how do you know? And so what I'm always feeding into the new designers is have someone else test it, so you've got another set of eyes looking at it. Once you've cracked some, then you'll have more an idea of what you know and what you're trying to create. Are you trying to create something that can be used by the military? Are you trying to create something that's going to be a recreational cipher? If you're working with the members of the American Cryptogram Association to make something more difficult, maybe write a message that doesn't have very many E's in it, and that would screw up the frequency analysis tables. Or use something that has a lot of proper nouns. That's also going to mess with the tables. Monoalphabetic is going to be the easiest. You're going to want to learn about polyalphabetic, things like visionaire ciphers. And visionaire for a long time was called le chiffre indéchiffrable, the uncrackable cipher, because of the way it was written. These days with computers, we can crack it in seconds. Milliseconds, but back then it was very, very difficult. So yeah, it depends what your target audience is.
Thank you.
I'm familiar with like hash codes in coding where they add everything up and subtract it. Are there any human examples of that where we add things up or we use mathematics involved to encrypt something?
So repeat the question.
Like similar to sort of a hash code in coding, right? Are there any examples of codes where humans have done sort of mathematical manipulation and they back it out to
A human hash code,
yeah. I think that's something we could do ourselves.
maybe. Anyone here want to tackle that? It sounds like a good question for hacking 201.
Isn't that like what the here?
Like a bio?
That's a sort of biometrics.
Well, hash is generally one way anyway, you can't really reverse it.
Give them the mic, give them the mic.
Yeah, that might be the answer actually.
I don't really have no
Hashes don't retain information.
Right.
Got it, so it's dead. Once the formula, you can't use the formula in reverse.
I just thought it'd be interesting if is that it anymore?
Yep, we have a question. We got time.
Hey, thanks. Great presentation. Would you consider a code that relied on a book as a key, like letters, pages, columns, word lines, assuming that the individual using that book as a key didn't repeat words through messages? Would that be something that could be worked out, or would that be uncrackable?
Depending on how much ciphertext you have, I think that it could be solved. And then you'd have to kind of look around and see if you could find the book. An interesting thing during the Revolutionary War is the Americans and the British were both using the same book, but didn't know. They were both using the same dictionary. But yeah, if you're playing with it, it's the amount of text you have. That was the same thing with the Enigma ciphers. They had to have a lot of text to work with.